My name is Mike Butcher. I'm the editor of TechCrunch Europe, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the first ever TechCrunch event in the Baltics. How about that? We have fantastic sponsors, as you can see here, with grateful support of all of you guys. An awesome guy here, Andris. I won't go through all the kind of details. He's going to do all of that. But just to say, I'm delighted to be here. I'm here to speak to you guys from wherever you are in the Baltic region and to talk about the companies that I can meet here. I gather there's a live stream, tweets, TC Baltics is the hashtag and stuff. So. And also I'm going to, if you guys can give me 1 second on the Wi-Fi, I'll be able to cross-post to techcrunch.com, so all those guys in the US can, if they're up at this hour, can tune in to the action and hear from some of the presentations. I just want to say thank you very much, and let's get on with the show. Over to you.
Thanks, Mike. So my name's Andris Berzins. I'm chairman of TechHub Riga. And on behalf of TechHub Riga, I'd like to welcome you all here. We're delighted to have you here at the first ever TechCrunch Baltics. So the first thing I'd like to do is thank our sponsors. So our platinum sponsor today is mail.ru. And we will be having the president of their social networks division, Ilya Shirokov, here this afternoon to talk as well. Our gold sponsor is Rubylight, the investment company from here in Latvia, in Riga, and they will be giving their own special prize to their favorite in the pitch contest as well later today. Our silver sponsors are Nokia, the Nokia Developer Program, and Veritweet. Veritweet is kindly running the internet live broadcast and the video screens for those who are over back by the bar. So thank you very much to our sponsors. We really appreciate it. Without you, this wouldn't all be possible. And of course, thank you everyone who's taken the trouble to come here to Riga. We put on the sunshine for you, so outside it's -9, and in here it's probably going to be about 25 degrees soon, so we can keep it warm. There is some information on your seats about TechHub. It's got UK pricing on, but we also have Riga prices obviously on our website, which are different. But we're delighted to have everyone here on the day that also this evening we're officially launching TechHub in Riga. And yes, cheers, woo! And it's only about 3 or 4 months since we had this idea, so it's pretty cool. So tweet. Today's hashtag is #TCBaltics. Feel free to tweet, let the world know you're here, let the world know this is happening. We'd like everyone to hear about it. So I think we're just going to kick off with the first fireside chat.
Sorry, we are the Startup Wise Guys. We are here from the Startup Mafia, Estonia, and the Baltics. Just want to announce this morning that we are launching an acceleration program in Tallinn, kicking off immediately. Applications are open. And we are offering anybody who can find us a startup €500 per startup if they get accepted onto the program. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome on stage our first guest, Mr. Aldis Kirvaitis, who's CEO of Cherry Media Group. Thanks, Aldis.
Thank you.
So
Okay, great. Aldis, great to meet you. How's it going?
Fantastic. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Actually, that's not our first meeting, but you might not remember. We really got drunk in Kiev about
We
2
got
years
drunk
ago.
in Kiev.
Yeah,
Marvelous.
yeah.
That's the way I like to start an event.
Uh-huh.
What did we do? I can't remember.
Maybe
Maybe let's not go into that.
We didn't do much, but actually that was the day when the Cherry Media Group, which kind of I'm representing right now, right? Very much so, got started. So that was a really, really key day, actually. And
Was that okay? Right. Okay. Right. Let's get into that. Okay. So first of all, so the daily deal market in Europe has exploded in the last couple of years. We saw the Samware Brothers and Rocket Internet create a Leviathan, which got acquired by Groupon. you started Cherry Media. You're doing daily deals across the Baltics region.
That's right.
Now, can you give us an estimate of the size of the market, first of all?
I would say that, yeah, given that we had, according to our calculations, approximately 50% of the market in the Baltics last year, and we had gross billings, like gross turnover of about 12 million euros. So my estimate would be that it was something like 25 million euros pan-Baltic, the
And
overall size of the market.
What sort of user size are we talking about in terms of the numbers of users?
Are across
Customers.
the Baltics, yeah, across the Baltics, in terms of like unique buyers, during the last year we had something close to 130,000, and in terms of like subscribers, I mean it would be probably twice that. But the difference here, of course, is that unlike many daily deal companies who basically push every possible visitor to their site to actually become a subscriber, we don't do that. It's pretty much opt-in. So that's, I would say, the ratio of the subscribers that we have to the actual buyers is much different than in many other countries.
That would be quite interesting, because I think part of the reason for today is we want to kind of expose what's going on in the Baltics region for and many of you will be very, very familiar with what's going on, but also we want to kind of lift this region out and give it sort of a global kind of exposure, and to unpack what's going on. So perhaps, you know, for those people outside listening to the live stream and also to watching the tweet stream, could you give us a little bit of an overview of maybe the history of how the scene has developed, say in your market and more generally? Mm-hmm. You're working across 3 different regions, 3 different languages.
Or actually 4 different languages.
4 different languages.
Obviously, I mean, if we, especially in Latvia and Estonia, the Russian-speaking audience is a sizable part of the market. So yeah, that's more like 4 languages. That's right. And
so quite complex.
It is, I would say, but it's also exciting. I mean, even if you look at the genesis of Cherry Media Group per se, I mean, it's been a combination of organic growth, and it's also been a combination of partnering and putting things together. Because we realized pretty early that, I mean, if we take just single market, I mean, out of the Baltics, whether it's Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, it's a tiny market. Even the entire Baltics taken together, it's like what, like 7 million consumers potentially. I mean, more or less.
But also, but the actual market size is obviously smaller than that.
Yeah, of course, because I mean, you got the internet penetration numbers to look at and so on. So how this happened is that it was started simultaneously, but not in a coordinated manner. Let's say in Lithuania and Estonia. So Cherry started in Estonia was started by a number of entrepreneurs, actually a lot of whom are around here in this event today. That was in May 2010, and at the same time, Beta LT, which is our kind of flagship property in Lithuania, was also started by a totally unrelated bunch of guys in Lithuania, also in May 2010. So we could say it was synchronized. And by the time we had that drink in Kiev with you, that was I think October 2010. We were already talking to the Estonian guys. And the first time I met with our current chairman of the board and also a co-investor in Cherry, the first time I met him was in Kiev, not in the Baltics. And I remember we were sitting in this Buddha bar thing, right, and having crazy things happening around us, and we were sort of like just hunched down on our like iPhones and then comparing data and thinking about how we can actually make this a pan-Baltic company. Yeah. That was like 4 or 5 months after it got started. The numbers were, of course, nowhere near where they are today. But I mean, we realized early on that this is something that's kind of like a local story, right? I mean, it's not like we're going to start in the daily deal business and expand like into Russia or China or anywhere else. I mean, it was about developing the local business, making it as big as possible, as fast as possible, of course, capturing the market, and we realized that we have to work together. So we sort of kind of came to the vision that we need to work together as early as October 2010.
So it's interesting, perhaps you're one of the early examples of cooperation across the region. Mm-hmm. Is there any other examples of that?
Or if we look at cooperation, I mean, I wouldn't I'm not sure if we can phrase it as cooperation. I think there was a lot of pan-Baltic consolidation going on back even in the 90s when the first
maybe yeah, it's just a matter of market forces, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at IT companies, obviously they want to get big. They had to expand across the Baltics. If you look at news portals, for instance, Delphi again which is currently the #1 like news portal and has been there for a number of years. I mean, it has been started in Estonia. It rolled out in Latvia and Lithuania. It's #1 in Lithuania. It's pretty much market leader in Latvia as well, and so on. So even if you look at social networking, which was I was like proudly also part of that story for a number of years, like a company like started here in Latvia are by the person actually who is largely behind Ruby Light. So we have here him in the audience. Vitaly Rupstein was the founder of Forticom, who was first initially just like a pan-Baltic story, then it moved into Russia, it moved into Poland, so on. But we see that initially there's a lot of these stories that just get sort of expanded cross-border across the Baltics. Then some of them explode like outwardly, some of them just remain here and just get really entrenched in this region.
And, have you had to build your own platform to do what you want to do? How have you done it technologically speaking?
Absolutely. Interestingly, well, of course, initially there were like a number of separate platforms, right? Because Cherry Media is currently a company which was formed for a freeway merger, right? It was a merger of two leading Lithuanian daily deal companies and the leading Estonian company, which was by the time was already in Latvia as well. So obviously we started off with 3 platforms. We have now consolidated to 2 platforms, and eventually we'll probably get standardized on 1. Right now I think that we're still developing so fast that it makes sense for us to actually run different technology platforms. I mean 2 technology platforms just to make sure that we try as much new stuff as possible. Because as you know, I mean, yeah, there are benefits in consolidating tech platforms, but also it usually slows you down in terms of how fast you can actually roll out and try new stuff. So we don't want to do that now.
I see. So, what are your plans though to scale out? Can you scale out? Can you eventually look towards an acquisition by a larger competitor? Is there, or is it too early to talk about that at the moment?
I think it's always interesting to talk about, but right now it's purely theoretical. What we are looking at is, of course, growing and expanding as much as possible in the Baltics, because we see there is a lot of potential that hasn't been tapped yet. I mean, we have been named, and I think that it's an accurate assessment that among the major like Baltic internet plays, I mean, we have been the fastest growing. I mean, it's just when people are asking me, I mean, so what are we going to do in 5 years? I mean, I'm telling them basically, give me a break. I mean, it's just 18 months that we have been in operation, right? And so we are already among the largest, let's say, internet commerce players in the region. What we have to understand is in the Baltics, daily deals have largely been driving e-commerce adoption in general, much to a larger extent than, for instance, in the States or in Western Europe. If you compare like Groupon and Amazon, right? Groupon is in terms of like gross billings or like gross revenues, it's in comparison to Amazon, it's like 10% of Amazon, I guess. If we look at the story here, I mean, we are probably still not #1 internet commerce player in the region, but we are very close. We are probably like 80%, 75% in comparison to the largest like entrenched e-commerce players who have been here around for 5 years. So I think that we have benefited from the fact that, I mean, the region here has been reasonably, I mean, I would say considerably immature in terms of internet commerce adoption. The internet penetration rates have been high, but the number of services, the number of companies who have been selling to consumers over the web, over the net, has been like comparatively lower in comparison to Western Europe and the States. So that's largely, I think, that has been driving our like really fast growth.
In terms of platforms, what do you see happening in that market? I know that a lot of new markets tend to sort of leapfrog the kind of PC-based web and going to mobile a lot. I mean, are you seeing sort of, how are you seeing smartphone adoption of your platform or tablets? Tell us about that.
We are looking into that and we're working on that, but I wouldn't say that that's something that is completely driving our strategy during the next like 12 months or so. The thing is that smartphone usage, of course, it has exploded in the Baltics, and it is exploding and will be exploding next year even more perhaps. What we currently see is that a lot of users are actually accessing our sites to check out the deals on the mobile, but we are not talking even double-digit numbers. I mean, we are talking probably 3 or 4% of the traffic that's coming to our sites on the mobile.
So still quite small.
Yes, and in terms of transactions also, we have to understand a lot of, like most of the transactions that we do, they're not powered by credit cards. They are powered by like direct bank link interface, which is something peculiar thing for the Baltics and probably Central and Eastern Europe, due to like historical concerns about fraud that the banks have had. And most of these bank links everywhere in the Baltics except for Estonia, they're not compatible with mobile devices. So people, even if we basically gave them like the ability and really pushed it, so usage on the mobile, they cannot actually finish our like complete purchases over mobile right now. So we expect that to change. I mean, in Estonia, it's already possible to do that. In Latvia, the part of users who are paying with credit cards for our purchases, I mean, on our sites, they can do that over mobile. In Lithuania, which is actually our largest market, I mean, the mobile is non-existent primarily because we just cannot complete the transactions. And that's something that we're working with banks, basically, to address.
What sort of timeline do you think is going to take, maybe over the next 6 months, a year, 18 months? People to achieve that?
Or in terms of enabling mobile transactions, well, we are working on a workaround as well. Of course, we are going to be introducing like one-click payment based our credit card payments across all our sites. So technically, it will be enabled, I think, by the middle of this year, probably earlier. It's not like number one of our priorities currently. It's, I would say, like among the top 3. In terms of adoption, we'll see. I mean, it's really hard to predict. I mean, this market has been surprising us like in all ways many times. So,
obviously, there are a lot of entrepreneurs have seen the daily deal market explode, and many have adopted the sort of Groupon style approach. How do you differ in your approach?
First of all, I would say that the difference between Groupon and many daily deals in Central and Eastern Europe, probably with the exception of Poland, where of course Groupon is dominating already, and Russia. But if you take markets like the Baltics, and also we take markets like for instance, Czech Republic and Slovakia, Hungary, we see that the way merchants use these daily deal sites is fundamentally different, or at least largely different. Groupon is basically offering an advertising and promotion service, right? Most merchants are losing money on the deals that we offer, and they try to make it up basically on loyalty and new customers that come in the door and through the door during the campaign, and they expect them to come back, and so on. What we see here in the Baltics and largely in Central Europe as well is that a lot of daily deal sites have become sales channels primarily, and only afterwards they are seen as in their secondary role as advertising channels. The margins are lower. I mean, we're not disclosing the margins, but I mean it's public knowledge that the margins, the commissions that daily deal sites are taking in these regions are lower. The reason why they are still able to operate, of course, is that they're also way more efficient. Like their customer acquisition costs are way lower than, for instance, in the States, and that's not saying that the advertising aspect is not there. I mean, every merchant that is actually doing a promotion during a deal, like with a daily deal site, of course, he's getting a lot of advertising exposure. He's getting it online. He's getting actually it through channels like TV, which is what we're offering. But what we see is very few merchants are putting things like limits on the number of coupons per person, or even the total like amount of coupons. If they are basically able to service a large flow of visitors, they are not putting a cap just because they would be afraid to lose money. So what we see is that most of merchants that we deal with, they either break even on the campaign itself, or they actually even manage to make a small profit on that. And in addition to that, they are getting a lot of advertising exposure. And I think that's a fundamental difference from the Groupon style commerce. We could be able to move into that. I mean, basically by raising margins, raising commissions quite extensively, and turning this into advertising business. But I think that the overall kind of volume of business then would naturally go down somewhat.
There was a lot of controversy when the numbers came out about Groupon's when it did its IPO filing, about how it was characterizing marketing costs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming you took a different approach. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't go for that kind of advertising play. What do you think about that? What's your opinion of how they did that?
Or I think that was something that they had to do due to mammoth new customer acquisition costs, right? Like per user that we have in the States and also in many other mature markets. I don't think that they really had another choice. I mean, they had to take that chance. And I mean, they are of course betting that they are building a huge like list of, I mean, audience of list of customers, right? Essentially a huge mailing list. Of course, it's much more intelligent than that. They're getting a lot of like demographic information. They are able to slice and dice that data and target deals according to demographic, according to user behavior, and so on. Which was actually that's something that we are also doing. But I think that in their kind of situation, that was probably the only route that they could take. In our case, there are elements of that. I mean, what we see is, of course, that we are able to decrease our marketing costs every quarter without actually slowing down our growth. I think that the fourth quarter of last year, we grew our revenues by 40%, which was probably the best like quarter-on-quarter jump during the entire 2011. At the same time, our marketing costs were going down, and our like sales costs were more or less stable. So it's kind of a little bit of the same. But of course, we never had first of all, we never had the kind of money to burn to the scale of Groupon, even if adjusted for market size. On the other hand, there was no need for that, basically. I mean, we were able to construct this huge audience that we already have are at a fraction of the cost per user that, of course, Groupon or like CityDeal or other like companies in daily deals business in more mature markets had to cope with. So yeah, but I mean, as you're probably aware, and most of us here who are tracking the daily deals business, is that yeah, Groupon has just announced their results for 2011 and for quarter fourth. And while they actually missed the targets on profitability, they were growing faster than expected in terms of revenues. And I think that fundamentally, I mean, I'm very hopeful that they will turn out okay. I think that fundamentally we are probably, let's say, less risky business due to our size and due to market specifics than Groupon globally. But I do think that they're going to turn out just fine, and they're going to be a great company.
Moving on to your own experience as an entrepreneur in the region, how have you, how's it been? Give us an impression of how you've seen things have grown in the region for technology entrepreneurs.
Or it depends on
what's the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm. Depends on what kind of like time frame you want me to address. Because I've been in
the last 3 years.
Yeah, because I've been here like since 1997. I've seen quite a lot, let's say, of different things happening. During the last 3 years, what I see is that there has been a tremendous uptick in activity on the startup scene. Obviously, I mean initially, I mean during this like first part of for last decade, obviously the only large story that came out of the Baltics was Skype. And I mean, everyone has been discussing about that for years and then probably a decade. Now we see that there are other stories like GetJar, basically, which is fundamentally a Lithuanian company which exploded like worldwide and has gathered quite some influence over the scene. Of course, the Forticom story was absolutely magnificent in terms of how like a local Lithuanian/Latvian social network basically grew to the size of where they were in control of Odnoklassniki and then later on got merged into Mail.ru Group. So I think that these stories actually help to motivate people here. What I also see is that, I mean, in order in terms of starting new business and getting into startup activity, what I also see is a huge, tremendous uptick in activity of all kinds of accelerator programs, all kinds of startup, let's say, incubators and so on. The quality varies, of course. What I see mostly is that, at least in Lithuania, and that's a little bit different of a story, for instance, than in Estonia, but I come from Lithuania, so I see most of the stuff basically like on a daily basis, how it's evolving there. What I'm worried about is a little bit that during the last 12 months, the number of new accelerator and startup sort of incubator programs that I saw emerging on various scale and various like stages of maturity probably exceeded the number of interesting startups that actually emerged from at least Lithuania as part of the Baltics. So, but again, it's something that I guess it's a little bit of a growing pain and a little bit of sort of like lack of consistency initially that will sort itself out. I wouldn't be able to comment like a lot about the magnificent, like really interesting startups that are coming from Estonia and Latvia during the last couple of years. I mean, I know them, but it's not like I'm being part of that story. So that's something that I guess you're going to be discussing with the other guys here around during today.
I think it's very interesting. I mean, but I mean, we're gonna have the next panel is going to be about accelerators, and it'd be quite interesting to hear the perspective. I mean, for my 2 cents, I've seen an explosion of accelerators and incubators across Europe over the last couple of years. I mean, 2007 was a little bit desert-like across the European internet economy, but yeah, there's amazing growth going on. I mean, I think that we're going to see a sort of Darwinian process, basically, where, you know, there'll be a lot of companies and there'll be a lot of consolidation, but, you know, some really good companies and good entrepreneurs will probably will out in the end. We've got time for a couple of questions, Andres. I think we can do some Q&A. Do we have mics in the audience, or just people who shout out questions? If anybody has some questions or points they'd like to raise, you can shout out. I think I can probably hear you, and I can repeat the question if we can't hear you. By the way, it's wonderful to do this event in English. It's fantastic for me because my Latvian is not very good. But also, it's great for, you know, to get an international exposure. So, can you just go ahead?
You don't mind if I ask in American?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. American, yeah, tricky, but we'll have a go.
All right. Yeah. I'm Yuri Skacha. I'm actually a journalist working out of here in Riga.
I'm reading your blog, right?
What kind of funding did you get? I mean, how did you sort of accumulate the funding? Who seeded you? Whose mother's jewelry did you sell at the very beginning? And what's your total funding now?
So, just for in case you didn't hear the question, it's how did you start? How did you get funding to start up?
Yes, I got the question. In Estonia, if we take Cherry, which is like the main brand across Lithuania, across Latvia and Estonia, so Cherry was fundamentally a typical startup. It was pooling of some resources from the founders. They got an investment from Alan Martinson also, and who is pretty well known actually across the Baltics because he's been part of the Delphi story, he's been part of the Microlink story, so he's still on the board and actually involved in the, not exactly in operations, but let's say in the more strategic direction of the company. In Lithuania, again, there were two different parts of that. One of that was BTLT was pure startup. I mean, just guys got together, pulled some resources. Again, the founders had some previous experience with businesses, different ones. They were running some kind of web development company. They had some resources. They invested their own money into that, and then it started growing. Further on, I think the last round of investment that we actually took from the Baltics, that was in early 2011, if I'm not mistaken, when again two IT entrepreneurs with long history in Latvia, that is Normans and Yanis Bergs, brothers. Basically, they became part of Cherry Story. They made some investment. I wouldn't even be able to give you off the top of my head the total number of investment that we actually received. I'll just say that it's definitely not millions of euros. I mean, we're talking about the overall funding that Cherry has received right from the start. It's in hundreds of thousands of euros, not in millions of euros.
Any other questions at this point, or points? Well, okay. Finally, I just want to ask you myself, what's the future going forward? I mean, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? On a beach.
I think beach is something that it's good to have 2 weeks every year, right? I mean, I don't think that any of the people who are part of Cherry are really looking forward to spending the entire year on the beach in 5 years. No, so I think we are so busy with what we are doing during the next 12 months that I mean, it would be fair to say that we don't have a 5-year strategy. We have operating plans for the next 12 months. We have some strategic plan for let's say, the next 24 months. We don't think that for a company which is just 18 months old, it would make sense to make plans for what's going to happen in 5 years. I don't think Groupon is making plans where it's going to be in 5 years. I mean, I might be mistaken, yeah, but it's.
They probably are.
Yep, but What I see is that I mean, in order for us to remain really dominant in the Baltics, I mean, we have to do, let's say, effort. We have to make a lot of effort ourselves in the Baltics, but we also want to tap into the knowledge and sort of further integrate with Central European players, which we have actually started doing. Like in November of last year, right? We basically closed the deal with Slevomat, which is the dominant Central European, well, the largest Central European daily deals player. They're number one in Czech Republic, number one in Hungary, are in Slovakia. They are present in Bulgaria. We accepted a minority investment from them. We are integrating with them operationally. I mean, not on all levels. Of course, it's fundamentally local business, but we're sharing a lot of data with them. We're looking into developing further technology platforms together, because it requires more and more of investment, especially as we're moving into physical goods, we're moving into travel, so platforms are getting more complicated. It's a business which is very, very easy to enter, but of course barriers to scale are quite huge, not only in terms of marketing, let's say, costs, but also in terms of the complexity of the technology which you approach when you really start rolling out all these different categories of offers.
Let me ask you a slightly different question.
Yes.
In a couple of years' time, you're doing well, you've consolidated the market, you've integrated with Central Europe. Do you see this eventually becoming a business that runs on revenues, or do you see an exit or a liquidity event where you can take money off the table? And are you the kinds of guys who are going to reinvest in this ecosystem yourselves as angel investors, as seed funders, etc.?
I would put it this way: a lot of us who are part of Cherry business are already in that ecosystem. I mean, I myself, it's not my first kind of startup, right? I mean, I launched my first company back in 1997. I mean, it's still going strong, but it's basically an IT services company. I'm part of a couple of other startups as an advisor or like board member. So I mean, there is a magnificent e-learning startup actually, which has global ambitions, which has already failed and pivoted and then succeeded. And then there is there are technology companies which we are part of. If we look at other guys inside Cherry story, you're going to be talking to my friend Andres here, I think, who is an investor in Cherry, but he's already
so there's a Cherry
CEO
media mafia already, is there?
I would put it this way.
Like
yes,
the PayPal
yes,
mafia.
Yes, yes. So
right.
So it's happening already.
Excellent. It's happening already. Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Tulga. Please.
Thanks, Mike.